Hey there, this is Ryan, founder of ZBrush Workshops and author of Sculpting Realistic Game Characters. If there's one book you're going to buy, then it's got to be Sculpting Realistic Game Characters. Put a lot of information in there about anatomy, all of that stuff, and it all is within this whole ZBrush world. So it's a lot of good information, and it definitely sets you straight with some sculpting. But if there's a second book you're going to buy, then it's got to be Steven Pressfield's War of Art. That is an amazing book, and that's the next thing that I really want to talk to you about in this whole Anatomy 2.0 discussion. Now, anatomy is a whole global field. It's this big thing that we study, and the question of what is anatomy is something I talked about in the previous video. But kind of what the conclusions I draw are that artistic anatomy is about organization. It's about organizing all of these principles into actionable items that allow you, the artist, to create more realistic figures, more intuitively, easier, with more inventiveness, with more, with more emotion, more character, whatever. All the principles of drawing and all of the scientific qualities of nature are all kind of distilled down into these easy rules for you to understand. Artistic anatomy is about organizing the complexity of the human body so that you, the artist, can immediately implement all of that science, all of that knowledge. We learn about anatomy in a way that's very different than a surgeon. Surgeons don't have to sculpt it, although you'll often find people like that going to sculpting classes to really ramp up. There were a couple of surgeons actually in the Richard McDonald workshop that I was in a couple of years ago. And that kind of brings us to the next point and to Steven Pressfield's book, The War of Art. Because in that book, The War of Art, Pressfield is concerned about one thing, and that is resistance. He's concerned about what you and what I have to do to overcome the enemy, which is resistance. Because if you get through resistance, which I call the valley of the suck, if you get through the valley of the suck, you always get somewhere good. You always get to a positive place. But it takes time to get there. And that's one of the things Pressfield spends a lot of time talking about. How do we resist? How does that manifest? One of the interesting things that he talks about is how you find, you resist by looking up and researching. For example, how many of us have found that we start a character and we spend the first 2 days on Google, right? Just looking up and pulling in reference and things like that. Well, not all of that was necessary, but it was part of us resisting doing something. So really a lot of solid information there about how to combat that, how to deal with it, and how it affects us. It was really an eye-opener for me. And I was reading that in conjunction with taking Richard McDonald's workshop. And Richard McDonald is somebody who has beat resistance and beats resistance every single day. An amazing human being and an amazing craftsman, and somebody who just works at it. And that's the key. You just keep working at this. Get through all of the problems. And in this workshop that I had with Richard McDonald, we're in there sculpting. Everything's super intense. There's this energy. And one of the important things that I learned out of that is that you do everything in stages, and every stage has to be complete. Not only that, but also the term perfect practice. Now, that's a term by Vince Lombardi where somebody's asking him, a question. He says, there's no such thing as practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect, which means that every time you go to bat, whether it is in a game or in a practice, your mindset needs to be in gear. You need to be thinking like a professional. You need to be geared to accomplish what a professional accomplishes. If you step up there and you're unsure, or if you're just kind of half committed, you get kind of half committed and you get uneven results. Fine if that's where you are and that's what you want. But if you want to go pro, then you need to step up and you need to get into this perfect practice mode. So what's perfect practice? Perfect practice is all about each stage being complete. You have goals, proportion, form, really basic form. That's the first thing. Okay, and then you've got to go in and start to do structure, a little bit of anatomy, and then you go in and you do expression and that artistic feeling, right? Like you have to get each one of these stages going. And it helps because, it helps as a pro to sit and think about these things in this segmented way. It is part of our craft and breaks things down so that we can actually accomplish something. Because you sit down, you start to sculpt, and sometimes you get overwhelmed, you get flooded. Resistance creeps in, you walk through the valley of the suck, you don't know what to do. Things get lost, you put the model aside, you start another model. Happens all the time. So in that workshop, we're sitting there and we have a time limited. You got like 3 hours to complete a sculpture or 3 hours to complete a stage of it. And you have to get the whole body within, say, a half hour. You got to get the head in the next half hour. You got to get hands in the next half hour. Then you got to get in and tweak the form and the muscles and the anatomy and the flow of everything. And everything's progressing, along a path. And so that takes us all the way to this next thing, anatomy. And how anatomy fits into perfect practice, how it fits into the war of art, and how it fits into our craft. Because see, for me, anatomy was going pro. When I sat down and I said to myself, I am going to study this in depth, thoroughly. I'm going to name everything. I'm going to develop a picture inside of my brain of what that name means. I'm going to throw another book out. I know, a lot of information, but this is another really awesome book, Gift of Dyslexia. Right? I'm dyslexic. I'm sitting in a bookstore in San Francisco. I think at that point I was going to the Academy of Art College up there. And I'm just thumbing through the borders up at, I think it's Union Square or something like that. And I see this book, The Gift of Dyslexia, and it has one really cool thing that stuck with me all of this time. One of the ways he taught children to get or to deal with dyslexia is to create images for words that they didn't know. See, for the author of the book, dyslexia meant you were thinking visually. If you saw a word like elephant, you basically saw the elephant. If you were reading bridge, you see a bridge. But one of the problems that we have is we don't have we don't have images for words like the, a, at, in. So basically a dyslexic is looking and they say elephant, bridge, person, and nothing else. So they don't know how any of it relates because, they don't have images for the elephant on the bridge with the person. It's not connected. All right, I know. How's that all connected to anatomy? Okay, it's all connected because anatomy puts the images with the words, and the words give you the vocabulary, and then the vocabulary allows you, when you are walking through the valley of the suck, to map it all out and look at it like you're a pro. This isn't about who you are as an artist. It's not about who you are as a person. You're a professional sculptor. That's what you are. And what this is allowing you to do by studying anatomy is it is allowing you to walk into the middle of any problem and say, okay, I know what my boundaries are. I know what the lay of this landscape is, and I will first find my bones. Okay? Find your bones. Find your bony landmarks. Find your bony characteristics. Supraorbital rim, infraorbital rim. That's not necessarily a landmark, but it's a characteristic, and it's a name, and it's something that I can take to any of my students' artwork when they might feel lost, and I can just quickly put that in because I have a name for it, I have a shape for it, and I can read it now. As a dyslexic, I can see the whole thing. It's all put together for me. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't sat down and spent the time learning anatomy and developing this language, this new language of form, which is Anatomy 2.0. So I'm really excited about this class because we're adding some content. There's female sculpt in there. There's going to be a male sculpt. There's going to be some bonuses. As I mentioned before, we have this construction kit where you build the muscles, you build the skeleton, the bones with shadow box pieces with very clear diagrams of how to build them. You're not left on your own. You're not walking through this valley of the suck unprepared. I'm going to provide you all of this guidance with the hope that I am setting you up to go pro, because it worked for me. It gave me the strength and the power to kind of sit down and walk through any situation. Let me share with you this little clip I did a while back. It's for this upcoming workshop, Sculpting Thor. So I'm going to just talk while this clip is going on. But basically this clip is with the model in pose, and I'm developing it from what's theoretically kind of a crappy base mesh. It's not theory, it is a crappy base mesh. You know, the topology's not done out well. It's just kind of pieced together. And that's fine with me. I don't care, because I am really only interested in the sculpt. And as somebody who knows anatomy, I can have this model in whatever pose I want, and I can be deciding that's the deltoid, that's the bicep, that's the tricep. This is the relationship of the bicep to the tricep. Tricep is sitting higher, but is it a slightly, rotated? Where does it sit on the bone? Being able to put that stuff in within seconds or minutes is really, the most wonderful feeling on the planet. And that's part of what it means to go pro. It's part of what it means to be able to walk into a situation, start sculpting, run into a problem, find your way out, and just relax. You're an artist. You're a pro. You know what you're doing, and you're in control. So that's the thing that I want to be providing to you. That's the thing that Anatomy 2.0 is all about. Going pro, learning what you need to learn, developing all the skills and the knowledge that is going to empower you to solve problems and be a professional sculptor. So make sure you register down below or give us your name and email, and we'll keep sending you information and letting you know about the course all the way up until we release it. So good luck with your sculpts, and thanks for watching.